What it do, crew? It is Geeked Out, and I'm here to ask you a question. If you could choose any player from any era to build a team around, who would you choose? Many of you would say LeBron, and I say, fair to you, LeBron is a very good player. But if you ask me, I would say Tim Duncan. And I am going to prove to you why you should choose Tim Duncan as well. If you had the ability to choose any player from any era, I would prove to you why you should choose Tim Duncan 100% of the time. And let's start off with comparison, shall we? We look at LeBron and then we look at Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan has more championships than LeBron. Tim Duncan has won more games than LeBron. Tim Duncan has a higher win percentage than LeBron. Tim Duncan has a higher defensive rating than LeBron. Tim Duncan has more all-defensive teams than anyone in history. Even as a 38-year-old, he was getting all defensive players, all defensive selections. Now I want you to look at put a comparison to LeBron's rookie season compared to Tim Duncan's rookie season. Tim Duncan averaged 21.1 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 blocks. If you look at these rookie numbers, I have failed to even see a rookie that can even compare to these numbers. These are all-star level numbers. And granted, this was in the 1990s. In the 1990s, you were a good scorer if you could score 16 points. Tim Duncan was leagues above every other rookie, averaging 21 points and 12 rebounds. As a rookie, that's not even including the 3 assists that he throws out per game and the 3 blocks that he gets per game. And I also want to speak on this. A lot of people would discredit Tim Duncan by saying he had Greg Popovich, he had elite teammates, Hall of Fame caliber teammates, and they will also discredit him by saying he never had a prime. Excuse me. But I'm here to prove why these should not affect his legacy in the slightest. First, let's start off with teammates. Tim Duncan played with 3 Hall of Famers. One being Tony Parker, another being Manu Ginobili, and another being David Robinson. Now, I'm going to give you the context between all of these teammates. Tim Duncan was drafted to the San Antonio Spurs in the 1997 draft as the first overall pick. Where he went to a team the previous year where Duncan Robinson was suffering injuries and they missed the playoffs that year. They drafted Tim Duncan with the first overall pick. And immediately, as soon as Tim Duncan started playing for the San Antonio Spurs, it became well aware that the San Antonio Spurs were a powerhouse in the NBA. Within his rookie year, he averaged 21 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 blocks, and made it to the playoffs, where he didn't win the championship. But let's be honest, we didn't think any rookie. Still don't think any rookie would be able to win a championship their first year, or lead their team to win a championship their first year. But if his rookie year was just the beginning, his second year was fantastic. Within his second year, also playing along David Robinson, he improved his numbers, went to the finals, and won a championship at the age of 22. Now, I want to remind you that he joined the league at the age of 21 because he spent all 4 years of college before deeming himself eligible for the NBA draft. because he made a promise to his mother that he wanted to get his that he was going to get his degree, and he did. So he came into the league a little older than most players. But it was well census that even during his sophomore year, he would have been drafted number one no matter what. But let's continue. Now let's go over to somebody who is probably one of the most popular picks for the question I just asked, LeBron James. LeBron James averaged 18 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. Or sorry, 18, about 19 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. And he was rookie of the year. Now, if we compare Tim Duncan's rookie stats compared to LeBron's, it's not even close. Tim Duncan averaged superstar numbers compared to LeBron. Then we go to their second year. LeBron didn't even make the playoffs that year. And Tim Duncan won a championship. Now I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, he was older, so he had a little bit more time to develop. Okay, that's fair. Let's go to when LeBron was 22 compared to when Tim Duncan was 22. Tim Duncan won a championship when he was 22. LeBron lost to Tim Duncan at the age of 22 in the playoffs. Not even the finals, just the playoffs. I think if we look at that and you say that LeBron is the GOAT, or LeBron was better as a young player than Tim Duncan was, you would be lying to yourself. Tim Duncan was a one of a kind of player. Now, let's talk about teammates. There was Duncan Robinson, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker. David Robinson, while yes, he was a Hall of Famer, but he was debatably a Hall of Famer before Tim Duncan was ever there. That is fair. He couldn't win the chip without Tim Duncan. Tony Parker was a late first round pick. Not a first round, not lottery pick. He was a late first round pick that debatably could have dropped to the second round if the San Antonio Spurs didn't draft him. And third is Manu Ginobili. Manu Ginobili was a second round pick. And you can say, oh, but yeah, they were very talented players. Yes, but they were unproven players. Tim Duncan won a championship in 2003 with a 20-year-old Tony Parker, a 37-year-old Duncan Robinson, and a rookie Manu Ginobili. And I want you to look at that team compared to all the All-Stars and future Hall of Famers and Hall of Famers that LeBron has played with. Give me 1 second. LeBron has played with Shaq, Big Z, D. Wade, Chris Bosh, Ray Allen, Kevin Love, D. Rose, Kyle Korver, Dwight Howard, A.D. Westbrook, McGee, and Luka Doncic. Each of these players by themselves could easily be a future Hall of Famer, or at least an All-Star. And we're talking about 3 players. Most of these guys that played with LeBron, let's look at this list one more time, shall we? Shaq, number 1 pick. Big Z, All-Star. D. Wade, All-Star and Hall of Famer. Chris Bosh, All-Star and Hall of Famer. Ray Allen, Hall of Famer. Kevin Love, All-Star, averaged 20 and 10 before he even went to the Cavaliers. D. Rose, not a Hall of Famer, but was an MVP candidate. Kyle Korver, another All-Star candidate when he was with Atlanta. Dwight Howard, multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, has been in discussion for MVP of the Year, and he's also a multi-time All-Star and Hall of Famer. AD, young development piece from New Orleans, was already averaging 20, 10, and 5 on the Pelicans. Was a All-Star, was an All-Defensive player, was a MVP candidate in some years. We go to Westbrook. Westbrook was a MVP candidate, actually won the MVP, averaged a triple-double, and on top of that, if that wasn't enough, is also a Hall of Fame ballot, a future Hall of Fame ballot candidate. Then we go to McGee. McGee had already won championships. He had already won championships and I think he was selected for defensive player, not defensive player of the year. Was selected for All NBA defense. And then we go to Luka. Luka is a MVP candidate every year that he plays. He has played. Every time he plays, he averaged almost 25 to 30 points a game, 10 assists, and he has been an MVP candidate every year besides his first 2 years in the league. And then we compare all of these people. To a late first rounder, a second rounder, and a genuine Hall of Famer who was on his last years of in the NBA when Tim Duncan got there. Yeah. Next, we're going to talk about Greg Popovich. A lot of people would like to discredit Tim Duncan for Greg Popovich because Greg Popovich is such a good coach. But I would like to remind you that in the 1999 playoffs, Greg Popovich was on the hot seat for having a slow start. A slow start in the 1999 season. They had a losing record within like the first 10 games, and he was on the hot seat. And you know what Tim Duncan did? He made them the number one defense in the league, and led them to a championship that year. And that solidified Greg Popovich as the coach for the Spurs. Even Greg Popovich himself says that his system wouldn't have worked if they didn't have Tim Duncan. The next thing I want to say is that Tim Duncan, another thing that they would like to use to discredit Tim Duncan is that Tim Duncan never had a prime. Well, yes, he didn't have a prime like Shaq or LeBron or D Wade or any of those guys. He had consistent metrics over all years, and every year that he played, his team was a over 50-plus win team, except for the lockout year, where they still won 50 games. Now, I want to ask you this. Why do we hype up primes? Tim Duncan doesn't need a prime because he was consistently good no matter what team he was on. A lot of people like to say, "Oh, a prime is when their numbers are high." Tim Duncan's numbers were already high. He averaged 21 points a game. I don't know. He came into the league averaging 21 points a game. So, is that not high enough? He averaged 11 rebounds as a rookie. Is that not high enough? 3 assists, 3 blocks? Oh, some people say, a prime is when they win the most. Tim Duncan consistently won 50-plus games every season that he played, besides the lockout season. He never had a team that went under 50 wins in his entire career. He went to the playoffs all 19 years that he ever played NBA basketball. He has the highest win percentage for a player with over 1,000 games. And you can tell me that you would rather have a peak or a prime rather than consistent dominance over multiple years. Now, The last thing that people will say that compared to LeBron, he doesn't have the hardware. And to that I say, Tim Duncan has 4 rings. Tim Duncan has 5 rings compared to LeBron's 4. Tim Duncan has 15, which is the most in NBA history, all defensive selections, compared to LeBron's 4. And yes, LeBron has more MVPs, but he didn't make the playoffs every year. He didn't make the playoffs every year, like Tim Duncan did. He didn't consistently have teams that went over 50 wins. And he sure as hell didn't do this. He sure as hell didn't play with one team for his entire career. I think people fail to realize this. Tim Duncan played all 19 years as a San Antonio Spur, which by itself is legendary. It's so hard to find a player that stayed on one team for their entire career. Like, the only players that come to my mind that play for one team for their entire career is debatably Steph Curry, if he doesn't get traded. It's going to be Steph Curry, Tim Duncan, Dirk, and Magic. That's the only 4 players that I can think in history that are genuine winners, and they have won multiple years with different rosters, different constructions, and different game plans than on one team. And another thing I want to discuss is that Tim Duncan, while yes, he is a great player, he's also a great leader. If we shrink the size down from 1,000 games to, let's just say, 500, you want to know how many of Tim Duncan's teammates are in the top 5 of win percentage? 2 out of 5 players, not including himself. 2 out of 5 players that Tim Duncan has played with have had higher winning percentages. And that's Manu Ginobili with an average of 72.1. And Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard and Manu are both Kawhi Leonard and Manu are both elite win players. But you cannot say that they don't have that win percentage because of Tim Duncan. You can't say that. Tim Duncan has he has been a key player for multiple generations, for multiple eras. He did it in the 1990s, where back to the basket bigs were important. He did it for the early 2000s, where a big had to be multi-faceted, where you have to learn how to pass the ball, how to set screens and roll. And then on top of that, he played in the 2010s, where you had to learn how to space the floor. And Tim Duncan thrived in each of those. Tim Duncan thrived in each of those predicaments, in each of those eras. Tim Duncan, you want a back to the basket big? Championships. You want a big that can pass the ball, that can rebound? Championships. If you want a big that can space the floor? Championships. Tim Duncan, in my personal opinion, is one of the most versatile bigs to ever play the game ever. He played in 3 different eras of basketball, and each one he won championships. And then on top of that, his teammates. Now, granted, his teammates were never number 1 picks. His teammates were never number 1 picks, besides David Robinson. But David Robinson was he was older by the time Tim Duncan got drafted. But none of his teammates had been number 1 picks. Now let's think about all the elite players that he has played with, right? We got We got Tony Parker. He was a late first rounder. We have Manu, a second rounder. Kawhi Leonard, who is a mid first rounder. And if you look at all three of these players, every player that came from the dynasty that was the Spurs. Kawhi Leonard, multi-time champion. And a future Hall of Famer. Manu Ginobili, Hall of Famer. Multiple time champion. Tony Parker, multi-time champion, Hall of Famer. He turned people that the league wasn't even interested in into elite caliber players because that was the type of teammate he was. Tim Duncan was never the one to demand the ball. He was the one to grab the rebounds, play defense, and make sure that his teammates stayed active. And I think this brings me to the conclusion of why you should choose Tim Duncan 100% of the time. Tim Duncan, let me correct myself. If you have the choice to choose from any team, from any era, and pick a player to build around, you choose Tim Duncan. Because Tim Duncan has showed every year that he has played, he wins at an elite rate. He wins championships, and he makes his teammates better. And when you think of a player to build a team around, you want all three qualities that Tim Duncan brings. Tim Duncan doesn't need the ball in his hands to be an elite big man. Tim Duncan doesn't need to be the best defensive player on the court in order to be an elite big man. Tim Duncan has showed that he is the best player you can have if you want to build a franchise around him. 71 win percentage. Highest plus minus in history. And if that wasn't enough, the rings to back it up. Now, if we look at LeBron, and there's no disrespect to LeBron. LeBron is a great player, breaking records as he should. But if we look at this truly side by side, there is only one answer you can say. That if you want to win championships, if you want to win, and you want to be in a chance for a championship every year, you go with Tim Duncan. And with that, that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video and watched it all the way to the end, hit the like and subscribe button. And that's a wrap. Fade to black.